Hey. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dave Stein with the Rick and Dave Real Estate Solutions Podcast. I'm Dave Stein, one of your hosts. I am a real estate agent and investor here in the great state of North Dakota and joined by my co-host, Rick.
Rick Dame, I own Enterprise Services. We're a commercial lending partner here in Bismarck. Can't wait. Today we've got Chris Nere. Chris, you're in Fargo, is that right today?
Yes. Yep.
And Chris has been a staple, a pillar in the sub two community, a leader in the sub two community for years now. And Dave,
I'm excited.
Chris, I'm sorry. Chris, tell me a little bit about what you do and your operation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, absolutely honored to be here. You guys are outstanding at what both of you do, and I'm just happy to be a part. So we've been in real estate for about 8-9 years. Started in the upper Midwest, North Dakota, Minnesota area. Right now, we do a lot of activity locally. We've got a construction company on the east side of the state. So we usually have 2 to 4 flips projects going on at a time. A lot of situations where, I like to say that we're in the people business, not necessarily in the real estate business.
hmm
We just happen to particularly help people in this very critical need or part of their lives. Like for a lot of people, like this is the single biggest financial asset or burden that they have. And so we've really become a go-to for a lot of other agents, a lot of homeowners that are in a difficult position. Maybe the typical solutions haven't worked, or they need to move quickly. They have a house that just isn't sellable. And we'll try and find a win-win solution for them. Take something that needs some love, it needs some attention, and help it to become something that's contributing again for the community. A lot of that activity we do locally. We've done some work across the state, in Bismarck, where you guys are at. A lot of those fix and flips, some of them we're holding on to as nice quality rentals for individuals as well when it works for that. And this has been our primary market for many years, in across North Dakota, Minnesota, down into South Dakota a little bit. Over the last year or so, we've really branched out significantly, actually down in Georgia as well. Big affordable living crisis down there. A lot of things that we're working on to help solve that problem and again, help build up communities.
So, Chris, walk us through like who you are. How did you even think of let's jump into real estate?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how did you get there? And then we'll I think there's a lot of stories here to tell about how you've helped so many people.
Yeah. So I was in healthcare for 14 years. I was a rehabilitation specialist. We had a kind of combination clinic, physical therapy type work, chiropractic work. And so I was seeing a lot of people that were physically hurting, right? They needed help with their health. They didn't know what to do, didn't know what to turn. Again, kind of the traditional means or methods weren't working for them. And absolutely loved it. I loved the people. I loved trying to meet them where they were at, help them realize that they were loved and cared for, and help them to bridge the gap to where they wanted to be able to get to in their life. And again, it was a great venture for me over the years. We ended up doing a lot of business outreach, working into kind of the corporate setting a little bit more, helping people with their workplace settings, ergonomics, the place that they were spending most of their time. And I'd always been involved in real estate. I grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota. We were in the real estate game, if you will, right from the beginning, but we were always building and improving, and I always had a passion for that. While I was in healthcare, my wife actually started to she knew about this and started to prod me a little bit more. And she'd been thinking about how could we build something ourselves, right? And have an even bigger impact on our local communities, improving people's lives, making neighborhoods better. And she really perpetuated for that for us. And so we started with a couple duplexes in our local neighborhood. We got a traditional bank loan on them. And we actually still own both of those buildings today. They've been
Great.
exceptional over time. A whole story in them, kind of wild, how we were able to take those down when we went from nothing to two right at the same time, even purchasing them traditionally. But that really lit the fire. They were half empty at that time. Again, needed some attention. In those days, it was a lot of sweat and late nights, right? We were doing all the work ourselves, painting the walls, improving, changing out fixtures to try and create nice environments. I'd drive past these like dumpy houses all the time, and houses that I knew were rented that were just neglected and not cared for. And I always knew I wanted to do it different. That I wanted to give somebody a home that I would want to live in, right? Whether it was a rental, an apartment, a big house, whatever it was. So we started with those. We started to look for a fix and flip opportunity, found some foreclosed homes that had been started and really abandoned by the previous owner who had wanted to fix them up. Those projects went really well, and it just really took off from there. So we started doing several of those projects on the side as I was working full-time in healthcare, building some of the rental portfolio, and about 4 years ago got to a point where that was really taking off. It was really pulling a lot of my attention. I had to choose a direction, right? I couldn't
Sure.
keep doing both because I was shorting both and my family in the meantime. So
Sure.
we jumped in head over heels and into real estate. I think the one thing that was really important with those, and actually my wife and I were just having this discussion yesterday. We built up some activity and some momentum before we let go of what we were currently doing. This for many people is a superpower. Like to be able to start to build something while you're already fully engaged, say in a full-time job, is such an important skill
Yeah.
because it forces you to really use your time well, use your resources well. And so now when you do launch into that thing full time, you're so much better positioned, right? Instead of going from having all of your time occupied, guided, somebody else is telling you what to do, to, hey, now I have to tell myself what to do every day, right?
Without a guarantee of income.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a leap, but I knew that I could keep helping people and serving them in their lives every day. And it's been just amazing, all of the stories and people that we've come across. So much now that I feel like problems find me.
Good. I mean, a
Let
good
me
problem to
solve them.
have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned worked in healthcare. Now you're in real estate. Do you give your tenants healthcare advice still?
Good question. Not specifically, no. I've also learned over the years not to give advice until it's asked.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
I don't always abide by that. You can ask my wife and my kids, but do the best I can. But I still have a huge passion for that personally, and trying to share that knowledge and direct people where I can, especially when they're stuck in their health journey. So.
Well, Chris, I know, speaking of like answering people's questions, you have always been such a valuable resource. And for the people that are watching this at home, I've called Chris on weekends. I remember a case about a year ago where I got a call while I was shopping at Walmart from someone from Valley City
Sure.
on a situation, and he said he presented the case to me, and he said, Rick, if you don't know where to go, I know you'll know who to ask. And I went home and I called Chris, and Chris walked through the scenario, and he was just super great to work with. How do you when you get these calls of distressed owners, because this was somebody who was trying to pick up a house on foreclosure, it was
Yeah.
right at crunch time, as oftentimes these things get pushed till the very last minute. When someone calls and it's kind of walk us through that stepwise fashion of how you first de-escalate the situation and then logically
Yeah.
progress through the deal.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to again remember is that we're dealing with people and their lives, and the home, the piece of property is kind of the vehicle by which some of the distress is coming, but we have to go to the person and start there, right? They're in a period often of distress. There's often time issues like this case, and I remember that one and many others because we do a lot in the foreclosure space. And foreclosures often happen because people get stuck in their lives, right? And they don't know what to do, and they stay where they are, and time and events keep happening. And so, right, we're often a day before an auction, a week before an auction. And I know then, okay, we need to get the facts figured out quickly, but I need to connect with this person because they are so distressed in their life. Their head is scrambled. They can't even focus and talk straight. I need to start with them. Where are they at in their life? What are they needing? What are they really asking for? Right? What are they hoping to accomplish? And just starting with some of those simple, basic questions, giving people your focused attention and them realizing that they're cared for, and hey, finally, as somebody is paying attention to me, is like 90% of the job half the time, right? But if we can identify that, then usually we can quickly put the rest of the pieces together, right? Where are you at in the process? You know, what's owed, what's going to be happening, and then we can kind of work backwards from there and say, okay, here's what it looks like we need to accomplish, and confirming that with them, and trying to build a solution not based off what I want to make happen, but what do they really need?
So, Chris, real estate investors can have a bad rap. They become
Yeah,
considered sharks, snakes, you name the adjective. One of your principles that you just touched on was connecting with the person.
yeah,
You and I did a deal together in Bismarck where they were in a pickle, a real
yeah.
bad one, and it's something that you even shared at a recent meetup, where you were able to change these people's lives for the positive despite not having the traditional real estate sales.
Yeah.
Walk us through how that came to you, what were the struggles you faced, and then what was like the end result.
Yeah. So this was actually a house in pre-foreclosure, meaning that the lender had sent notices. They were initiating an auction, right? Because they hadn't been paid for the loan. There was a timeline on it. There was a date coming up. And we connected with a gal named Anna, and Anna was living in the home. And she'd been living there with one of her sisters, her mom, and previously her dad, who'd passed away a few years before. And both of the daughters had medical issues, right? They had struggles. They had a hard time, bringing in income and things. And so this family situation and being able to live together was really what was keeping them all going. Well, the dad had passed away a few years prior, and then just the year prior, the mom had passed away. Well, the mortgage was in the parents, in the name of the parents, and the home was owned by the parents. Okay. And when someone passes away, they don't have a spouse, then legally the house needs to go through a process in order to determine who is the right person for this house to go to. And there's steps that need to be taken. That's called probate. Now, when people are really on top of things, they can put some documents in place to avoid this and make sure a home transfers property. We always try and point people to a couple really good attorney contacts that we have, really inexpensive things that people can do to make sure that they don't leave this mess for family members. But what we often find in families that are struggling is they don't think about these things. They maybe don't have the means to do some of these things. And so nothing had been put in place to transfer the house from mom and dad to the sisters. Okay. And so the sisters had been living in the house and they didn't have the means to pay the mortgage. And now the bank was coming for the home. And so when we first connected with Anna, this was the situation. They didn't know what to do. They didn't really know what to turn. The house was very lived in. Again, they didn't have any means or money to keep up with the house. So, the roof hadn't been done in 20 years. There was broken windows. There was closed up, patched windows. They're just trying to get by, let alone fix anything. And almost no way that they can sell this house, right? And if they had tried, maybe couldn't have even paid off the mortgage, let alone been left with anything. So we said, okay, this is a big project. It's something that we are able to take on and able to do. And they really wanted to be able to get some money to be able to get into a new place, right? Get a down payment, a first month's on an apartment. So Anna and her sister could kind of start their life over again, right? And they had found a way that, hey, they could make payments on something smaller, more manageable, and live their lives, right? But at that point, there was no way for them to get anything out of the house. And we realized this, and they didn't have money to go hire an attorney, right? To go through a probate process and then try and do this before a foreclosure would happen. So we said, okay, there's a lot to do here. There's value we can add to this house. And I would really like to be able to get you some money to get started again, right? They were looking for a few $1,000s and we kind of settled on, hey, I want to be able to get you to $6,000, right? So that the two of you can have something to start with. And I said, because I know that you can't perpetuate this, you don't have the means, I'm going to go pay for probate. I'm going to pay the retainer for an attorney to go through that process so we can get this all accomplished for you, right? And that was a risk that I had to take, knowing that something could happen, something could fall through, and we put protections in place the best we could. But I said, you know what? For a few $1,000s, this is worth it for me to step into this mess, to help this family, to help them get through transition, get some money. And I know that there's potential enough in this house for us to step in and go through this process,
Yeah.
And, if I do 8 of these and 8 of them work out, I know 2 of them might not, right? And I might have to eat something like that, and that's okay. I had another one actually a few months later that we did the same thing. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get things. There was some title issues. We weren't able to get things done ahead of a foreclosure. Again, somebody had passed. Everybody had moved out of that house, and so it ended up being okay. But that's just how things go sometimes when we run into these situations.
So, and let me help paint the picture. So I was on the ground for Chris and doing walkthroughs, not quite like hoarder level, but it was in disarray. And you could just feel it when you're walking in and when you're talking to Anna. They just felt defeated, nowhere to go. Like it was just
No
impending
hope.
doom, no hope,
Yeah.
impending doom, just waiting for the clock to run out.
Yeah.
And so
Basically
even
waiting to get kicked out of the house after a foreclosure and then not knowing
homeless.
what they were going to do. And then the double-edged sword of, hey, now I have a foreclosure on my record. Most people don't want to rent to me.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And so from that, just a few walkthroughs of like, there is some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. There is a solution. There's some hurdles to walk through, some things to go over. But then you and I had a lot of conversations because you're
Yeah.
also an investor. The math has to math.
Yeah.
You can't just walk around handing out
Right.
$15,000 checks to folks, otherwise you would be Oprah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I'm
so
trying
you
to get
got
there.
you stopped the foreclosure. You did a full renovation,
Yeah.
and then what was the end result as far
Yeah.
as Anna moved out, and then you sold the home?
Yeah. So interestingly, the kind of the way some of the numbers were landing too, things were really tight from the beginning, given the size of it was like a 70, $80,000 rehab. And we knew, hey, if I go get a new loan to pay off the old one, it's going to cost me even more, right? There's bank fees, right? Interest rate is going to cost more for me to hold the house. And so we had actually the way we purchased the house was on something called a subject to purchase. We took over the loan or took over payments on the current loan. They had like a 3% interest on that rate on that house. So by us holding that loan in place instead of getting a new one, we were able to save some money during the process. And then I knew, hey, I can I can guarantee them a little bit more money in the end because of that. Instead of pushing out more money to a bank per se, I can put that money back in the seller's pocket. Now, in this case, the loan wasn't in their name anymore, but we've had other sellers where, it is their loan and it is in their name, and now their credit has been completely destroyed. One of the best things that we can do is keep that loan in place and start getting the loan performing. Okay, we catch up late payments at close, and then we start paying on it month after month. And what do you think it does to their credit? It starts to build and build. And so sometimes there's multiple ways that we can help serve these people beyond even just the event, but further into the future. So we were able to purchase the house that way. Dave, you helped us too with a lot of great insight on the house, some market insights, because we didn't quite know which way to go with this house. It had been a duplex at one point, had been converted to a single family house. We decided to convert it back, found the right contractor for the job, and then worked through a lot of the normal hoops and uncertainties with a big renovation project, that
Hmm.
things come up, and we always have a buffer that we build in because we don't know what it's going to be, but there's always going to be something. So we ended up meeting our budget, meeting our buffer, numbers lined up. You were able to list the house, and then we were able to get it back in the hands of another investor that now has a really nice finished building, and can contribute to that neighborhood as a quality rental, because the house was actually right next to a church. So how glad do you
Hmm.
think they were to have a nicer home that was going to add to the neighborhood instead of a home that was headed towards potentially being condemned?
Correct. Yeah, I think they're very happy. I
Yeah,
think, and just I would say the neighbors are happy, right? The whole area, because of that exact point of we're now blossoming or
yeah.
revamping the community and not watching just our houses deteriorate.
Yeah. And I mean, we could have probably sat on that and maybe even bought it at the auction or whatever else. But, it's like, well, would we have really helped those people as much? If I'm just looking at well, what can I get out of this? There was probably several things that could have been done by somebody to try and cut out more and end up better in the end. But that's in the long
Not your
run.
game.
No, and that's not how real business runs. Like those sort of people that operate that way, those sort of businesses will run dry over time, right? Old school business is about serving people, right? Sales is about connecting with people and finding out what their need is, and then getting creative on your own side and figuring out how can I meet their need and still make it work on my side instead of the other way around.
Yep.
So
100%
yeah,
agree.
it's just I love those stories. we had a similar one too the year prior, very, very type of similar situation. And I remember that one too. That was one of the first foreclosures we had done. And I remember going through that process and feeling like, God, did I really do enough for that person that I bought the house from? Right? Maybe I should have tried to get them more, give them more. And I got a random text message from that gal one day, 3 months after we bought the house, and just like gushing with gratitude, like, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to turn. We moved back in with my parents so we could get stable. My husband's back at work. My kids are happy at school again. You don't realize how much of a ripple effect this can have on people's lives moving forward, when you meet that need in a situation where they didn't know where else to turn.
Right.
Chris, well, I love your story. Yeah, a couple of things that I wanted just to summarize, just because I've had this feedback over the years from individuals and from realtors who have questioned what, are you sure that taking over this mortgage and essentially paying their payments is legal? There's still that perception out there. And then there's
Yeah.
this due on sale clause that oftentimes people read about, or they might chat GPT, you know, this, and they'll get a caution on due on. And could you just touch on the legality in case somebody's
Yeah.
watching this and they're saying, can you really do this? Because
Yep.
I know you are 110% rock solid on your legality. And then also the due on sale clause is something I think that's it's oftentimes something that's
It's
very
kind of
easily
like the
handled.
the boogeyman, is the word that I like to use. Yeah, great questions, and those are good questions to ask. In fact, sometimes when those questions don't come up in conversations, I'll tell sellers, "Hey, here are 5 things that you should ask me," right? Or if it isn't me, um, because I openly tell people, if you feel like you have a better direction or somebody else, like go with them. I don't need to buy the house, right? We've got plenty of other opportunities. But there are a couple things. So actually, these sort of transactions have been done for decades, right? A long, long time. They just haven't been as publicized, especially in previous years because interest rates were so low. They just weren't happening as much. But there are numerous IRS documents that like go through this exact scenario. I think the best case really is that there is a line right on a HUD settlement statement for this specific transaction from the government, right? Loans taken subject to or assumed, right? Same line item right on a formal closing statement. And we're always doing these through a title company or a closing attorney for those states, right? And so they're going through all their legal procedures and steps and doing that. We've always gone that route. They've always been attorney reviewed. And you know that if this was not on the up and up, they would not be processing them, right? They would put the holds on. Now, there are some title companies out there that won't, but usually it's just because they don't understand or they don't understand the important steps that can be taken. But we want to make sure that the seller is protected in these situations just as much as a seller would want to be, right? I don't want to get involved in something too where it looks like I did something that I shouldn't have disclosed or informed or best served the other side, right? And Dave, you know that as an agent, right? You have a
Mhm.
responsibility to kind of do your duty, if you will, even if it's not in your
Correct.
own self-interest. So that one is so easily overcome. The people and the situations that are kind of throwing the illegal statement usually just haven't dug into it, right? Or they don't know, or this is just it just doesn't right seem right. But they
Doesn't sit right.
right the kind of the old when people are confused about things, they always say no, right? Or this can't be right, or it can't be good. But when we clarify, we point those things out, I'll point people to the title company all the time and say, like, go ahead and visit with them, or here's the people that we've worked with in the past, that from years ago we're still paying on their mortgage. They'll tell that, okay, I completely forgot that I even did that most of the time.
Yep.
The second one, the due on sale clause, is a real thing, right? Most banks have in their pages and pages of mortgage documents a clause called a due on sale or an acceleration clause that says that, if the house is sold, okay, they're going through, they see this, they would have the ability or the right to call that loan due immediately should they choose, right? That's an out for them that they could exercise should they want to. But it is not a requirement. They're not required to do that. And if you really think of it, it isn't necessarily in their best interest, right? What is the job of a bank? Well, a bank is in business to collect interest and to pay interest out to their investors, right? They're an intermediary. They bring in and they push it back out. If they're bringing in consistent payments, if they're getting paid every month on a loan that they put in place, and often a loan that may be in a closed end on the other side, whereas if it gets paid off, the investors on the back end aren't receiving anything anymore. Why would they spend tens of thousands of dollars to force a payment and go through those steps when they were already getting what they wanted?
Especially in those first 10 years when most of the payment is interest.
Right. They wouldn't, like,
right.
And so it's very not in their interest to do something like that. Now, it does happen. There are rare occasions where, for one reason and another, it might oftentimes, it's just out of confusion, so usually a first step would be simply to contact the bank. Say that the bank sent out a letter 5 years after this happened, and they said, hey, we see the property was transferred. We're requiring you to pay the loan off. Oftentimes a phone call to the bank to explain, hey, here's what happened. Here's what we did. We're paying on the mortgage. You can see the payment history. That's all they need, right? They just needed to clarify, or maybe an insurance wasn't quite set up afterward and something needs to get tweaked or changed. That's often route number one. If it still isn't satisfactory, then we have means to redo some of the paperwork through the title company to potentially deed the property back and repurchase it on maybe a contract for deed or even a lease option where, again, we kind of satisfy what the original bank is looking for in that situation. We have there's an attorney in Texas actually that we've worked with before, and he's been doing these transactions since the 80s, like thousands of these transactions that his company has done. And he said, I can count on one hand the number of times that due on sale has actually been called, and here's how many times we weren't able to resolve it. Right? Every time they were able to work around, get around, satisfy what the bank was doing, work with them in that case to make sure that we could keep things moving forward. So yes, it is a real thing. It does happen, and there are circumstances, but when the loan is being paid and is kept good, the risk is negligible, you could say. Or again, we can work through something like that. So again, I like to call it the boogeyman because it's like this big scary thing. It can scare people. It can push people into not making a decision that maybe was actually the best decision for them. Right? We've had cases, in fact, where somebody was going to have to come to close with $20,000 or $30,000 on a regular cash traditional sale, and we were able to buy it at a higher purchase price, actually get them a few $1,000s at close, and we essentially guaranteed them $20,000-$30,000 that otherwise they would have had to pay out. So I would say, what's riskier? Getting afraid of something and not taking action on something that would be really the only fit for your case because you don't have equity in your home right now because of market or condition, or you take a traditional offer and guarantee yourself a $30,000 loss. So
Pretty easy when you put it that way, right?
yeah, it's not for every situation, right? Sometimes it's better than others, but when it is a fit and it is a help, it can be such a tremendous help to those people. Like Anna, I couldn't have got her and her sister that much money if we had bought it traditionally. There wouldn't have been as much room to do that.
Right. And timing may not have even worked as far as
Yeah,
before the foreclosure and
right. Right, because I didn't have to go get an appraisal, right? I didn't have to go through that whole process. We just had to bring enough close to catch up, funds to catch up the loan at close, pay all the title costs, right? So they didn't have to come out of pocket with anything. And then we were able to bring in funds for the rehab separately.
right.
Chris, I know we're getting towards the end of the hour, but I had this question written down and I wanted to make sure I just get your thoughts on something.
Yeah.
What are the things that when people come to me looking for money on their commercial fix and flips or ground up construction, their DSCR, multifamily, whatever, one of the stickiest points, and you would think this is always should be crystal clear in the investor, but it's not. It's the exit strategy. One of my first questions is always, what's your exit? And so many times I get this vague, wishy-washy, we might go down Avenue A, but then we might go down Avenue C. And I always try to tell them, listen, you've got to have this well-defined. You might have three exit strategies, but make them different. Your plan A, your plan B, and then what if everything else fails, your plan C. Have those ready for because that's going to help you get your loan there. Can you talk about having a defined exit strategy when you get into whether it's a sub two or any other real estate purchase? I think I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. And we will do private lending as well. We're lending on fix and flips. We're also bringing funds in on other projects, and so I'm very aware of those things on both sides. But the key with any investment is always to start from the end and work backwards, not what is in front of me and well, I'm going to try and figure it out from there. This looks like a good deal, or hey, I can see that there's a problem here and I can solve it, and so I'm going to go do it. But that leads people to problems, and it leads people to having issues. In fact, I'm trying to help a couple private money lenders right now get out of a situation where they did work with an investor on a fix and flip. Things didn't go so well, and as we unwound it, we found out, hey, the game plan wasn't very good. Right? They were making assumptions that they shouldn't have. They didn't have the track record that they should have. And all the writing was on the wall. They didn't know. So, first of all, we're always looking for multiple exit strategies, right? So if a property is a fix and flip, well, let's say that the market turns, completely crashes, right? Or the house isn't selling, or a loan, right? We've got a 12-month loan and it's coming up. What are we going to do in those situations, right? Stress test the situation. Those two words are so important, right? Give it a stress test and see if it will still pass. Because if it won't pass a stress test, like another $20,000 in renovations or a 10% dip in the market, or XYZ, then you haven't built in enough of a buffer to do this deal. Because I see a lot of those where I get things on paper and I say, hey, here's what we're going to buy it for. Here's what we're going to renovate it for. Here's what we're going to sell it for. And we're going to make, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. But when, again, we start testing it a little bit, we see, hey, actually, there's not enough margin. And if the worst case scenario happened, there wouldn't be enough room for me as the lender and the investor. That's not safe to me, right? I don't want to be in a situation even of that where maybe I got paid, but they got nothing. To me, that's not enough. So very well-defined exit. Again, what is the plan, right? Show me evidence that this plan is valid, right? Comparables that actually make sense with this product, right? Looking at how long things are selling, right? Are you planning for an appropriate timeline? Okay, you can have an ideal timeline of 3 months, but if everything's selling for 6 months, then that's what we need to build our numbers off of, right? If you get 3, great, cherry on top, but we're not going to lean into that. So those details should be very clear on a project like that. And then again, if it isn't going, what other direction could you take the property, or how long could you float the property in order for a market to turn? Or, hey, could you rent this property and at least get by for a while until you were going to sell it? Or this was going to be a long-term rental and that isn't really working. Do you have another avenue where you could show numbers to furnish the house and then transition it as a midterm rental, or some other type of creative strategy? Like a lot of single family houses just don't pencil as long-term investments. They, especially in this interest rate environment, they just won't pencil. So what other types of creative uses can you do with this house? So down in Atlanta, for example, we had a situation recently that pre-foreclosure, no way this house could go. The house was furnished. It was already updated, right? There's no value add here to try and bump it up. Doesn't work as a long-term rental, wasn't going to work as a traditional midterm, but we transitioned and converted that house into a co-living home because there's a huge need for affordable living down there. And we had a very healthy buffer in that sort of situation. Or, some people will turn to other means, like a group home, or there's so many other strategies, or even having, hey, my exit is my other partner, Rick, or my other partner, Bob, that does this sort of strategy, and he could take this home and do something else with it that would work, right? Those sort of things are really important that we work through, we line out. And I would venture to guess, Rick, that even when you see somebody explaining through that process, you can tell and this is a more viable situation, because people would think that doing an investment or lending on a deal is about the deal and the property. Yes, to a certain degree, but I would argue it's more about the person that you're working with, right? We lost $70,000 on a flip property a couple of years ago. One of the very few losses that we've had. And it was right when the market turned. And we got to a point where we decided, hey, we're just going to shed this and move on because it's better for us. But who do you think I paid still, even though I lost that much? Our private money lender. I paid them on time, and all of the interest I told them I was going to pay them, not a penny less. Because I knew it was about relationships and about the long term, right? And doing the right thing. And so having somebody with a track record who clearly knows what they're doing, right? They have resources, they have means, right? They have a business beyond just, hey, I'm doing this single property, right? Being a single property investor, one rental, one flip is a risky business to me because you've got nothing else to help it.
Sure.
Yep.
You mentioned, I just want to make a quick note on comparables. Those are so critical, and you don't have to use a real estate agent, but we kind of know what's going on,
Yeah.
Even you, Chris, you've been doing this for 8 years. When you did the property in Bismarck, you still asked me, hey, can you run your own? Like, I have my idea. Can you run
Yeah.
yours? And let's see if we're the same or if we're way off. Maybe I see
Yeah.
something you don't. Maybe you see something I don't. That will make or break your deal. I mean, that you could get in a real tight pickle
Yep.
if you just run comps that are favorable to the situation you want and not what's reality.
Yeah, when we get we get a lot of deals that come towards us to, people selling something, they're bird dogging a deal, they're wholesaling. And I ask them for comps mainly because I want to see where their head's at. And they're 95% of the time very and excessively favorable to the valuation of the deal. And so, yeah, we've learned to do our own. But it's the one thing that I've learned and I continue to be taught is you need to lean into people, right? This business and business in general is about people, not only the people you're serving, but working with other people, right? Look at a Henry Ford, for example, right? He knew actually very little about automobiles and some of the inner workings and even how his factory was running, right? And he got pushed several times by newspaper reporters and the public, like that he was ignorant and an idiot, if you will, because he couldn't explain some of these things.
Hmm.
But he said, all I have to do is push this button on my desk and someone will come in that knows everything down to a T, right? He surrounded himself with the right people. And so that's been a huge game changer over the years to do that more and more. And even as we've had more success, to stay humble and realize I don't know everything, I don't know most things, but I am getting good at finding the people who do and working with them
Hmm.
and leaning into them and developing a relationship. So, super grateful for you, Dave, to help us on that project. Absolutely integral, both at the beginning, during, and getting that property sold.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was fun to be part of that story,
Yeah.
to be a chapter in that person's life, just as someone's helping Chris to help me. Um, yeah, and it just again, it made me feel rejuvenated on this is why we do what we do. We're in the business of helping people.
Yeah.
Rick, you lean forward. Share your last bits of wisdom.
I just want to say thanks, Chris. You are a wealth of knowledge. I could sit here and listen to you and ask questions all day long. I so appreciate your time today, Dave. Thanks so much. I just so the great thing you mentioned Henry Ford. One of these great leaders. I don't think it was him, but I always mentioned it's so important to be the dumbest person in the room. And sitting here listening to you guys, I realize I'm in the right room, right?
I would say
Uh,
the same thing. I would say the
um,
same
I
thing.
think we all
You
could,
get,
yeah.
you guys you're experts in your areas, and yeah, absolutely love talking to you guys about those aspects of the business.
Chris, if someone wants to get a hold of you, where can they reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, couple ways. The easiest way to find us and find the right avenue is dealswithchris.com. Whether you're looking to get involved in a project, you want to get on a team, you want to connect with and partner with somebody, lots of different avenues that we can provide that way to try and help people.
Sweet. Rick, how about you?
You can reach out. You can find enterprise services both on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can also find me on Instagram threads, or just reach out and 701 I publish my cell phone. It's right on my Facebook, so I don't mind giving it out. So
Sweet. And you can reach me at DaveStein29 on any of the social media platforms. Chris, an absolute pleasure. Rick, always fun to have our
yeah.
good conversations. And until next time, guys, take care.
Thanks, guys.